Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card uses Faber-Castell Glass Bead Glitter Gel. Mine is a little old, and that could be why it's a little stiff. It's definitely gooier and stiffer than embossing paste, and you'll see it when I apply it in a minute. I'm using this Irregular Dots Stencil by Simon Says Stamp and this Happy Birthday to You die by Lawn Fawn. I just wanted to have some circles going across the middle of my card, and it turns out that the center of this stencil has a really nice line of circles where you can sort of cut it off and it could be straight across. So I'm going to just center the bottom half of the stencil on a piece of Nina Stoner white cardstock, and I'm going to use some surgical tape. And looking back on it, I probably wish I hadn't put so much of this down because it was a little bit hard to get up with all that wet glitter gel. And then I covered it again with some Post-its, and it turns out that I was going to cover that part anyway, so I didn't even have to go through all this. But anyway, so you just want to use whatever stencil you have on hand, and I'm going to cover my Nina cardstock with some Distress ink. I'm going to start with some broken china, and I'm priming my applicator, and I find this really helps avoid those rectangular blocks that you might get, and it really kind of saturates your ink pad, the foam pad with ink, so that it just gives you a more even spread of color. So I'm starting with broken china, and that's going to be my light blue color, and I'm mostly focusing on the center of the card. So the right half is going to be blue, the left half is going to be purple, but I want them to sort of fade together in the middle. So for my middle color, I use that broken china, which is sort of like a pale blue. And now I'm going back in with some Salty Ocean, and this is a really, really bright blue. Now these Post-its just kept popping up, and they were becoming annoying, so I just took it off, and honestly I didn't even need them. But anyway, so I'm just going to go through here. I went back in with some broken china after the Salty Ocean just to blend those two colors a little bit more together. And I'm going to flip this over, and I'm also going to wipe off my craft mat so I don't get any blue inside the purple. And then I'm going to do that same thing on the other side, starting with the lighter Dusty Concord purple in the middle, and I'm going to move that out toward the edge. So I'm going to prime my applicator again, and this is actually kind of a new applicator that I just got, so it doesn't have a lot of ink on it. Over time, these get better and better as far as being able to blend the colors. So you can see it gets a little bit blotchy here and there, but if you keep applying the color and you just do a very, very light application at first and then get heavier, then it seems to work a lot better that way. As far as my ink foam applicators, I have 2 per color family. So I have one for light purple, one for dark purple, one for light blue, one for dark blue. So for example, with the broken china, the tumbled glass, and the lighter blues, I'll use the light blue foam applicator. And for colors like Salty Ocean, Chipped Sapphire, Faded Jeans, I'll use the dark blue applicator. All right, now I'm done with the ink. I'm going to leave everything in place and start working on my glitter gel. So I'm going to use a palette knife, and I'm going to poke it in here, and you can see mine is really, really sticky. And again, I'm not sure. It could be because mine is old. I want to say it's probably a few years old. It's not like it wasn't workable. It was just much stickier than what I'm used to with embossing paste, and maybe that's just the way it is. Anyway, so I'm just going to apply a very thin layer. You don't really need very much, and it's going to go on as a very thick white, like paste, like the white paste. But it's going to dry clear. So I'm just going to take my palette knife, and I'm going to work my way around all of these circles and just make sure that I have a nice clean layer, and you can see that it's a pretty thin layer. You don't need much. Now, it does not look impressive at all, I know. I mean, you could see the glitter a little bit, but it really shines after it dries. And I have to tell you that this glitter gel really does actually take quite a long time to dry. I would say if you're doing things on the same day, maybe 2 or 3 hours. I let mine dry overnight because it was already dark, and I don't like to do my videos in the dark. But anyway, now that I got that all spread, I'm going to remove this stencil immediately. So you can see I'm having trouble because I put way too much tape on there. And when I took the stencil off, I kind of removed a little bit of the glitter gel in the upper right hand corner. And so I just sort of took my paper piercer, and I wanted to push it back to the edge of the circle. I wasn't sure how this was going to look. I knew it was going to dry clear, so I was sort of hopeful that it was not an issue at all. But I thought, well, it doesn't hurt to even it out while I've got it down here. So You can see that I'm sort of moving it around, but it's not quite as smooth as the rest of the card. And then we can take a look at it when it's dry. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call this done and move on to some other parts of the card. I have a piece of Neenah cardstock, and I'm going to do the same thing with this piece of cardstock that I did with the stencil, which is start at the center with my broken china and then work the edge with the salty ocean. I've got this in pretty fast motion here. And then I've got my dusty Concord, and actually when I wiped my craft mat, I had a little bit of water, which I picked up with the dusty Concord applicator. So I got a little bit of line there, here and there, but it wasn't enough for me to start over. So I just blended them back and forth until I got it the way I liked it. And then I cut this strip down the middle because I'm going to put one on the top and one on the bottom of my circles. And I also cut a strip of Simon Says Stamp vellum, and I die cut my happy birthday to you. I didn't bother doing the whole thing. I knew I was going to cut it off. So there's a nice curve at the edge of the Y, so I'm just going to cut that off. And so now I have just happy birthday. And I have this new Zig fine tip roller. I just opened the package, you can see, and it's a squeeze and it's a fine tip, and I had a lot of trouble. I thought it'd be fun to kind of do it on camera for the first time, but I would squeeze really hard and a whole bunch would come out, and then none would come out, and it was taking so long to kind of maneuver this thing around and get the glue out that the first part that I did was already starting to dry. So I was like, forget this. So I got my chisel tip back out and do what I normally do, which is just dab, dab, dab here and there, and the glue comes out really nice and fast in big chunks so that I have time to kind of move it around on my cardstock before it becomes permanent, and just generally way easier. So I'm going to center this in the middle of my vellum, and you can see that I do have a little bit of time to maneuver it around. I cut some strips of black cardstock to put at the edge of these inked pieces. And the reason why is because I wanted there to be a separator between the colored panels and the circles. So I needed something to sort of define the edge. And so I cut these black strips, and I used my Zig 2A glue pen on the edge of the strip, and then I just sort of positioned it over the black cardstock so just a little bit of the black was showing. And then I waited overnight to finish up the card. So here is the panel completely dried. That little mess up on the edge of the circle can't be seen at all. People are gonna wonder how you did this. It's very cool. So what I'm gonna do is I have to first trim these pieces. I forgot to trim them before I put the black cardstock on them, but it's no big deal. I just trim them out, and then I'm gonna take an ATG tape runner and put one at the top and one at the bottom. And then I'll just add some tape runner on the back of this entire panel and adhere it to my card base, which is A2 size Neenah Solar White. Now I'm going to adhere my vellum piece. I always adhere vellum with glue dots. I just put them in inconspicuous spots on the back. I'm going to put it right behind the happy birthday. And the reason why I'm using vellum is because I didn't want the stark black sentiment over the beautiful sparkly thing. It was like two intense things right on top of each other. So this sort of muted the dots behind it so that I could get my sentiment to stand out a little bit more. And then I put some dots on top of the glitter gel, just kind of figuring out where I can put the dots on the glitter gel. And I put one on each edge, and then I just placed my vellum on top of that, just centered in the middle of the circles. And then the die, I don't know if the die has a dot for the eye or not. I never use it if it does have it. I just put a marker dot right there, just so much easier than dealing with a little tiny piece. Anyway, so that is the card for today. I'm really glad I worked with this glitter gel after having it for so long. I had no idea how pretty it is. So anyway, I hope you'll try it at home, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.